This is
Make it plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thought we'd do well to hear from those who are actually on the ground in Buffalo in the aftermath of this terrible mass shooting, this terrible tragedy. Joining us now, a licensed clinical psychotherapist who is a part of Life Camp, Erica Ford's organization. Those joining us this morning work in the space of ending gun violence and gun violence prevention and intervention every day. Ronna Ryan with Life Camp joins us here on Make It Plain, and also joining us from Voice Buffalo as a part of the Live Free Federation, the great work that Pastor Mike is doing, the Reverend Denise Walden. Welcome you both to Make It Plain.
Thank you. Thank you.
And sorry we have to meet under these terrible circumstances. Folks, we've heard all of the reporting on the mainstream media news, but let's hear from those who are right there in the community. Reverend Denise, tell us what, from a community perspective, what happened Saturday and how you heard about it.
Thank you, Reverend Mark. So actually, this is my community. I live a 5-minute walk from Tops on Jefferson. I was at home cleaning with my younger 2 kids, and my phone just started exploding. And my husband called me and said, "You need to get down the street. It's bad. It's really bad, and your community needs you." And I came on out, and I was met by families that were aching in ways that there are not words to describe, because their loved ones, some of them laid out in the parking lot in front of the grocery store. Um, and it's tragic. It's tragic that someone can drive into a community that they don't know, that they've never been part of, and can be filled with so much hate and anger that you wouldn't make a 5-hour drive to destroy a community of people that you think you hate, but you truly know nothing about. Got there, families were hurting. Um, it was a lot going on. Started mobilizing families to get to one of the schools up the street, so that we could find a way of making sure that everybody was getting the news they needed, because it was hard. There were folks who weren't ID'd. It took a long time. We were at Mikowski from about 1:30 in the afternoon until about 11 p.m. last night. We got the last ID last night at 10:45. 10 individuals lost their life yesterday, and 13 individuals total were shot. To my understanding, the youngest was 14 years old. So this is hard. This is hard.
You said something. I want to be clear. Your husband said you need to get down the street. Are you in that close proximity to where this happened?
Yeah.
This was that close to you? Lord have mercy. So this is a store that is heavily visited then, correct?
It's the only grocery store in close enough proximity to the only one accessible to our community. Um, Within, gosh, it's got to be a few miles. Yeah, it's the only one. It's the only one on the east side that isn't close enough proximity. So yes, all of our elders, all of our loved ones, all of our children go to this store. My kids walk to this store frequently. There's a Family Dollar in the next parking lot over. Our local Chinese restaurant, our library is across the street. Um, our favorite coffee shop is on the next corner over.
Hmm.
This is home. It feels like someone came into our home and violated us horribly.
And clearly certainly did. Ronna Ryan, let's hear from your point of view when you heard about it and what gear you went into.
I'm like Dr. Reverend Walden. I was actually leaving that area because my office is in that area, and I was actually cleaning up some lot. I have a lot in that area that I was cleaning, so I was actually cleaning, meeting the person to clean the lot at 2:30, and this happened at 2:30, and it's maybe like 7 minutes away. So, and I've seen police coming, shooting past me, but I'm thinking, I just we normalize things. You understand? We normalize when we see police officers chasing by us. We most times, thank God, they're not chasing behind us, right? For no reason, right? But um, I got home and I saw it on the news, and I just broke down and I called Erica, and she connected me with Pastor Mike, and we've been mobilizing ever since last night. That I want to offer free service. I want to offer therapeutic services. I want culturally competent services that understand gun violence, that understand adverse trauma, that understand generational abuse and oppression. And this is a part of it. This is not, first thing I heard on the news other than the incident was prosecution. Where's the evidence? How did this happen? Why is he wasn't tracked? Where's the transparency of how this happened? Why wasn't it monitored? So prosecution is one thing, but explaining to our people how can this happen in these days? On top of the food apartheid, on top of the one store, on top of the lack of transportation to get to a store. And not having stores mean no jobs. Not having stores mean no adequate healthy foods. And my biggest concern, other than the therapeutic, culturally competent therapy, is what happens to these families when they can't go to the store tomorrow and the cameras are gone. What happens when they have to walk to a store which actually not there? You can't eat out of a bodega. You can't live out of a bodega. You can buy a bottle of water. Maybe you can pick up a pack of cards, but you can't buy meals in a bodega. And that's been happening to me. For me, this is not about just today and how we were gunned down and slaughtered. It uncovered the generational oppression.
I mean, we're living in a time where our council is considering increasing our policing budget by $5.4 million, but yet there is no resources in our Black community, right? To Raina's point, there is a lack of jobs, right? There's a lack of funding, even going to the few community centers that are over here so that our kids have safe havens to go to. We ask how. All through our community yesterday, there were several individuals in the community who saw that same man 2 days before. He was in our community 2 days before. So how? We ask ourselves how. How was he 2 days prior in our community? He comes back 2 days later and he slaughters 10 people and shakes the lives of an entire community. We have been having this conversation about the violent culture of Buffalo. This is not new. This has become a culture in our city that is toxic and evil, and it has to be addressed and it has to be dealt with. And there must be transparency, there must be accountability, right, to the people of this community. And that's not what's happening. We are watching county salaries get raised. We are watching all of these things, but our people are suffering. Like we said, violence is not new to Buffalo. But do we ask what's at the root of the violence? Why are we allowing these guns to constantly be brought into our community? Why is this happening? Why hasn't this truly been addressed? We got $347 million in the city of the Buffalo in ARP funding. Show me where the new programs are. Show me where the new resources are. My kids live in this community. They play in this community. Show me a community center that has the capacity to allow our kids to really come in. And where are the service providers that should be there supporting them and loving on them? You don't see it. But we got $347 million. I'm watching trucks all up and through the city, fixing roads and putting up this and putting up that. But the real prevention needs to happen in the community. Where have we invested resources into places like Urban Christian Ministries who have been doing work in this community for 40 years? And yet they've never received a dime from the county, the state, or the city. But they've been working with gangs in the city for years and doing it well. How are we investing in those that are truly doing the work to do the prevention work, right? Where are the people that are going to walk these streets and love on our young people who are hurting and crying out for justice? Because on one hand, we're watching our people get slaughtered for doing things like walking to the store in a hoodie. But we watch this 19-year-old young white man get to come disarm himself, take his clothes off, and peacefully get taken in after he slaughtered our people. And we ask, where is the justice in that? We need to see it. And the faith community, listen, I believe in the power of prayer. Prayer works, but faith without works is dead. We have got to come out of our buildings. We have got to come from behind our pulpits, and we have got to stand with these folks that are hurting. It's not enough for us to keep just showing up when there's a rally or a vigil or a protest. Who's going to be out here when all these cameras leave?
A couple of things you said I want to be clear about. You said that there are those who saw the shooter a few days
2 days
out.
prior.
How much detail did they provide? And
He
have the
was
police shown any
talking.
interest? Did the police show
He
any
was
interest in
standing.
those stories?
He
I'm
was
sorry.
standing across the street from Tops, talking to people in the community. Somebody bought him a bottle of water. He was out here like he was anybody else. And 2 days later, he came back.
So clearly he was casing the location. You mentioned too, some of our young people are taken down just for walking down the street wearing a hoodie. Are you referring to the police?
Yes.
Okay, right. And this guy was somebody else, just like um, the individual in Charleston was treated differently. Was he
Yeah.
not? Ron, is
He
that your understanding too? That he was treated?
Yes, I've
very,
learned more
very
today.
differently.
I've learned a lot more today that the families are also crushed. No one wants anyone hurt, but the way this young man was able to take off his uniform, take off his armor, and walk his way into the police car and things like that. And like I said, the families don't. This is not about retaliation. This is about how people get treated when they are in these situations, and the families were just crushed that the person was treated like he was a human, like he had those, like he didn't do nothing wrong,
It's addressing this
like he
culture
did
of
nothing
hate
wrong.
and evil,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
addressing the culture of
So
hate
it
and
played to
evil.
that. It plays to that.
If we can honor the humanity, then we should be honoring everyone's humanity,
Yeah,
and that's not what's
yeah,
happening, right? We watch
yeah,
the narrative that is put out around the black community every time something happens in the black community, right? They're gangbangers, they're drug dealers,
yeah,
right? All this stuff,
yeah,
all this narrative about our
yeah,
people. We don't care about each
yeah,
other. It's all this
yeah,
black on black crime and black on black hate, and this is the narrative that's put out there. But we all know that that is far from the truth. That is far
mhm,
from the truth, right? And what we
mhm.
ask is that if you can treat some with dignity, then treat all with dignity.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
can care
yeah,
about services for some, if you can care about what went wrong in his upbringing, what trauma support he
yeah,
needs, what about the trauma support that's needed for these kids? And if we were
yeah,
doing prevention services right,
yeah,
they wouldn't be picking up the guns in the first place.
yeah. Yeah,
Let's
and
just be honest.
identifying people through language, shooter, terrorist, killer, and it seems like the black people become killers. Shooters don't get bad treatment. Killers get killed right away if they do something wrong. The terrorists get killed. Why is it different languages? Because the languages identify how the treatment would be. And we have to look past those languages because we say those words: the shooter, the killer, the terrorist. Murder is murder. Murder is murder.
And we have to do the truth of telling about this dominant narrative that keeps going out, that justifies in these people's mind that are so full of hate and anger that it is okay to treat some people like they're less than human, that it's okay to view us as monsters, as villains, right? We do all this fear mongering, right? Like, for instance, let's look at the bail reform rollbacks. Look at all the fear that's been being put in people. And white supremacist groups take that fear and they stir that pot and they stir that pot until it becomes something evil and ugly and bubbling over. But we have to put a stop to those narratives. We have to put a stop to that fear mongering. We have to stop feeding that beast and tell
And,
the truth.
and specifically, we know he was radicalized by the replacement theory argument that Tucker Carlson talks about, critical race theory. He even had "Here Are Your Reparations" on one of his guns. It is reported, but I think it's very important, as you all are interventionists full time. I think it's important that people understand, because I think human nature is to separate the violence of mass shootings that many whites commit from the gun violence we see in the black community every day. Now, I know we all agree we don't like that term "black on black violence" because nobody else has. There's no white on white violence, no Italian on Italian violence, but it's like that is set apart somewhere. The violence we commit against each other. What I hear you all saying, and I think it's important in our conversation, that we find a way to stop people from separating. Violence is violence is violence. And so what I heard, I'm going to throw this out there and let you all expound on it, but what I'm hearing is that the proliferation of guns in our communities and the violence amongst ourselves every day enables someone like this to come in and do what he did, and because we are less than human. When we're painted as just being gun violent, that's like our nature. Black folk just shoot and kill each other. That's all we do all the time. And that enables people, they're not real, they're not fully human anyway, so we can just show up in there and kill them. That's one thing
But
I'm getting in this conversation. Right?
that's one major part of it. But tie that into the lack of resources, which exacerbates the volcano. It's one part of it. It's in everything. When I say the lack of resources, from education to healthcare to mental health, it is mental health month. No one is talking about that. From the resources, from the transportation, the jobs, and then the black on black crime. It's the volcano. It can't separate. You can't separate the language that's based around black or black crime, based around other cultures' crime, because that language dictates the behaviors on how people are treated.
And how we set people up, right? We live in a community. I'm a parent advocate in the Buffalo Public Schools District. We'll put first graders out on formal suspensions, 45 days out of school, right? But if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about the things that are happening systemically.
I don't want to leave that there now. On suspension for what? What is somebody in first grade doing be suspended for?
Listen, so point in case, I was in a school about one of the students whose parents I support, and there was a young girl in the office, and they were arguing and tussling with her. It's a school, they have a uniform, they have dress code, but she came to school that day in a hoodie. They wanted her to take the hoodie off. She refused. They said she was insubordinate. Security drug her to the office. They put her out on formal suspension. Come to find out, she had the hoodie on because her brother was murdered the night before. And she wanted to feel close to him, right? Like, these are the things. Like, these are real life things. We have to like, these are real life people with real life situations.
We're talking about little girl. So
yes,
folks treat our girls. Go ahead.
You have to be trauma informed and understand generational trauma to be able to connect with that child. You cannot counsel a child or connect with the problem if you don't understand the problem, if you're blaming them for the problem. I love Dr. Reverend Walden example because that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say trauma informed, culturally competent services that Life Camp is so adamant about.
Like, how are the schools preparing for Monday? You
Yeah,
know how
for
many kids live in this community? How are the schools preparing for Monday? I
yeah.
guarantee you, I'm going to get about 30 phone calls on Monday for children who live in this community who have been sent to school, right? Because they have caregivers. Let's be honest, there's a lot of non-traditional households here. You got grandmas raising kids, aunties and uncles raising kids, siblings raising kids, right? A lot of non-traditional. So these kids will be sent to school on Monday. How are the schools preparing for what these kids are going to walk in with on Monday? And we've
It's,
seen this too many times, and it's bad.
so, there is, and I agree with everything you said too, Sister Rana. When it's also the services, when you deny people services, you also dehumanize them, um, whether the violence comes or not. But obviously, I mean, you got kids having to walk down the street um, before Saturday, having to negotiate violence and trauma. And then they have to negotiate it going to school Monday. But it is a little bit different because here this is a white boy coming in there killing them because they are black. So how is the community processing that or going to process that? It has to be overwhelming because it seems there's just you're surrounded
I
by
don't think they are I don't think they are processing it because again with the normalization and the lack of black therapists and providers without those restrictions as Reverend Walden just talked about, I don't think that we are prepared. We're not prepared to
And
service
people
these
have
people.
normalized,
We're
right? Our
not
community
prepared.
has normalized this kind of trauma coming. Yes, this is different. Yes, a white boy came into a black community. He shook up our world. But as we were preparing for the vigil today, I can't tell you how many young adults walked over to me and he's like, we don't even know how to feel anymore. We're numb. We don't even know how to show up anymore, right? We have no idea. And that's the mindset. And don't get me wrong, there are some good things happening. People have mobilized on the ground. Crisis services are being set up in spaces. We have people like Sister Raina, who I'm grateful for, but we need more people that look like us, that are showing up and serving our community. I just came out of where we've set up at Johnny B. Wiley to show up for people. And I'm going to tell you, 80% of the people in there don't look like this community. And right now,
people may not know what's Johnny B. Wiley. What is that?
Johnny B. Wiley is a community center that's
Gotcha.
part of a school right here up the street from where the shooting happened. And Crisis Services, the American Red Cross, and some other groups have come together to be on the ground for trauma and crisis support. But again, right? Like right now, this causes a level of distrust and a sense of no safety. Like people don't understand. So for my sons and my friends' kids and our community members to walk into a space where it's supposed to be trauma informed and centered in love and care, and you look around that room and 75% of the people in that room look like the same person that just shot up your community, and there's not any people that look like you, that's a trigger. That's a trigger, and we have to be honest about that. And so it's making it difficult for folks to process their trauma. And then we have to understand too, right? Like this is a process, right? People are still waiting. Yes, people have heard. We have talked to all 10 of the families. They've heard, but they have not seen their loved one. Their loved one is at the county building. They cannot get access to see their loved one. And it makes it difficult when people can't get closure. And so when you ask about how are people processing, I think people are just trying to breathe right now. I
Yeah.
can't say that people are trying to process. I think, and myself included, I just look for moments to catch my breath, right? And I stand because I have to. I feel like I have to.
Of course, and it is, and we appreciate you both. And now, you mentioned though that there are people who are providing services who don't look like us but look like the shooter. What is that? What
Yes.
is that about? Who's providing those
That's
services?
my concern, that families are not getting culturally competent workers. It's a lack of, it is a lack of hiring African American therapists, or having resources where they can get educated and become, outreach, violence interrupters, or programs that understand gun violence and the adverse effects of gun violence, where Reverend Walden was saying that people who have to get up and go about their business the next day, but they still dealing with oppression that was here generational. It's generational oppression. So today and yesterday is just opening wounds, opening old wounds. And if we don't have people who understand those wounds, who understand those pain of from slavery to abuse, um, um, that we have to sometimes act like it don't exist just to get to work and raise your kids. So many families are suppressing their anger and hurt. And this, I think, will be suppressed for a while until we start getting some real services and resources. I like Reverend Walden talked about crisis intervention being there. I'm on my way there to offer some pro bono work. I'll be offering that for the next 3 months to all the families who were victims, as well as the community. I am trying to galvanize as many African American therapists, but again, the resources are very limited here.
Before we go, lastly, and I appreciate you all's time, we want you to get back to doing the work on the ground and the interruptions you're involved in. Um, Reverend Denise, you alluded to resources in the city budget and all that. And I don't know, and I apologize. I live in New York City. I don't follow Buffalo politics that much. Who's running Buffalo? And is it a black mayor or a black city council or just what?
We do have a black mayor. We do have several folks that are black folks on our city council. But I think that in itself states a lot. That in itself says a lot, because yet we are where we are with the lack of resources that we have. And for folks who are of and from this community that are now sitting in positions of influence because they're in elected office, to still not ensure that resources come into the communities that they're supposed to be serving. Um, I think there's a lot that needs to be addressed in our city. There's a lot that needs to be addressed, and I think that folks need to come to the table for a real conversation. And I think that our electeds need to come to the table with the people that are on the ground in this community doing the work, and support us in the solutions that we know that are needed, and not keep dictating to us what they feel. Continuing to increase our sheriff's department budget and our policing budget doesn't create safety in the black community. That's not what it's going to take. And so we need to really talk about what interruption and prevention looks like, and stop reacting when devastation comes to our community, but start doing some things and putting some things in place that will address the culture of violence. Again, the culture of violence in our city.
Yeah, yeah.
And my last thing would be on that is that, this is the time for all politicians to work together to find solution-based services. As Reverend Walden said, solution-based services means everybody's involved. The family, the community, the politicians, everybody's involved. And this is where you can build that momentum. This is where you can actually show why you were voted in. This is a great opportunity for both sides to come together and help a community so we can give back as a community. Helping a community is not a selfish thing. It's an act that gives back.
Amen. Sister Raina Ryan of Life Camp, Reverend Denise Walden of Voice Buffalo, part of the Live Free Federation movement. They work against the plague of gun violence every day. They are violence interrupters. And we're thankful. And I'm sure Buffalo is
And
thankful. They're there. Yes.
I would just like to say thank you also to Life Camp and Reverend Al Sharpton from the national and offering services from the National Action Network, and also Reverend Al Sharpton offered as well as Life Camp to pay for some of the families' funerals. So I want to thank Reverend Al Sharpton for reaching out and having his people reach out.
Amen. Thank you both for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep these warriors close at hand as this story continues to develop. I should ask this, though. Those who are listening, are there ways that those in our community, the general public outside of Buffalo, can help you all? Do you all need contributions? Why don't we put that out there? So,
I mean,
Yes, because I'm going to be offering free pro bono services to families that are underserved who are only have access to traditional services. So if any social workers want to come on board, I teach at the university here. I already saw some of my students here. So help getting people things they may need, food pantries, baskets of fruits, things that we can give people that supermarket is going to be closed. So I'm at Consult with Raina Ryan. I'm located at 651 Delaware Avenue. My number is 716-206-9867. Again, I'm representing Life Camp, and of course, Al Sharpton and the National Action Network will also need support because family's going to be running there too. And I know Reverend Denise Walton have a lot of resources that she would definitely need to the work that she's doing.
yeah, please feel free to follow Voice Buffalo on social media. We will be doing drives to make sure that families have what they need food wise and otherwise, and also coordinating faith services for families who would like faith services to just offer that spiritual support to these families that have been impacted, and not just the families that have had tragic loss, but to the people who love them and are in community with them. We are here from you. And you can reach out to me at 716-465-2297, Denise at voicebuffalo.org. And we just appreciate whatever support you can lend our community right now. But mostly, we need lots of love, light, positivity, and prayer.
And just don't forget that NAN is the Buffalo chapter, not the New York City chapter, Buffalo chapter, National Action Network.
thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister or brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.